And we are live. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I am good. So, everybody, welcome to the latest pop culture SquadCast. And we have America's Thom Zahler with us. And
Hello.
um, we we are going to be talking about Love and Capes, I think, tonight a little bit, which is
Yeah.
something you and I haven't talked a lot about in interview type situations. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I went away from it for a while.
Right. So I want to get back to that. Are you? I'm hearing you a little bit low, but it could just be me. Are you? Is that the mic you usually use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on a second. I can try something real quick. Does it sound better?
No, I think the other one was better. Go back to that. It's probably just me. But let's do this. Okay. So so we now have on Kickstarter, and I'm gonna put this up. I'm gonna share screen. I'm gonna share this guy. Chrome tab. We have
Hey, that's my Kickstarter.
this is live. We are funded. You've made the thing in less than 12 hours, which was fantastic.
Ooh, I've got another backer too since the last
All
time I
right,
checked.
see,
That's awesome.
you got it. It's constant checking, right?
God, yes.
For the next 28 days, there's nothing but how many backers do I have? Anybody back out yet? Or
Yeah, it's going to make those 8 hours driving to New York interesting, but
sure. There's more than that, and we'll get to that later. But so for anyone who doesn't know yet, Love and Capes in the Time of COVID collection is now available on Kickstarter for the next 28 days. So why don't you tell us about that?
all right.
And
Well,
what is in this Kickstarter? What are the rewards? What's the premise behind it? How'd you get into it? There's lots to talk about.
so I came back to Love and Capes last year, and the trade collection came out in, I don't know, I think November, December 2020. And in thinking about it, I knew I wasn't done with the characters. I knew I was coming back to it, and going through all the COVID stuff that you probably saw in the papers. I was looking for a reason or a way to start a Patreon because conventions were out and work was weird. And I figured out how to do Love and Capes during COVID. So I wanted to deal with how the superheroes were dealing with it.
That's great. That's a great idea.
I set it 6 months in the past so that I was able to write about what happened and not write about what was happening, because that was always a moving target. So it's much easier to set it in the past. And I just thought there were a lot of universal things that we all went through that the heroes could relate to too. So things like one of the things that happens early on is Mark is getting frustrated with his parents because they don't seem to be taking it seriously. And he's yelling at him that, I'm the one who's invulnerable, not you. What are you doing? Catholic Church said you don't have to go to mass. Just stay home for the novelty of it, which is not at all a conversation that I had with my parents.
No, I'm sure you didn't have that conversation.
No, because I'm not invulnerable. So I put a lot of those frustrations and fears and things that we're all going through. I very much decided, especially as it's gotten more political, not to get political with it. It's all kind of like the universal truths of living through what's going on and not so much talking about why or what is going on, if that makes any sense. So it's just it's kind of a salve for everybody to say, yeah, I went through that too.
Yeah. And having read it, it is, or what's completed of it, most of it. It's not anything that's hitting anybody on the head politically one way or the other. It's like, hey, we all lived through this massive change to our lifestyle, and how did it affect us, and how might that have affected other people? And it's really, really well done from a perspective that it's not necessarily calling anyone in particular out. Just, this is what we all did. How did that change?
Yeah, and there was so much stuff during the pandemic where it was well, I mean, I know like going through it, but it's not the same thing. So for me, this pandemic is very much up through the vaccine. But there's so much stuff that we went through that like you get so deep in what you're going through that you kind of forget that other people are going through things too. And
Sure.
just like why people are making decisions and, like Abby's bookstore has to close for a while. And that was something that a lot of people were going through where like you want to stay home and you want to do what keeps people safe, but you have a bookstore that you're paying rent on and you also need to sell books. And, that's a balancing act that it became like, I know somebody who didn't understand why everybody was talking about baking bread during lockdown.
Right.
And
sure.
he just didn't get it. He's like, I don't understand. I wouldn't be bored. I'm like, yeah, you're retired. You figured this out a long time ago. Like these people
Right.
used to do something for 40 hours a week and now they're not. And that's a big change.
Sure. Absolutely. So what is the goal, the product that we want to get, that the Kickstarter is going to get to?
So the main goal is that we're going to do a 54-page comic book with bonus material, kind of in what used to be called prestige format, which is currently my thought about how to keep doing 11 capes anyway, to rather than doing individual 24-page floppy comics, to do more like double-sized prestige format comics.
Mm-hmm.
What I did initially is I launched it on Patreon, and then there was a new page every week, and I always knew I'd collect it up. But the nice thing about the free-flowing format was that I got to add to it. Like originally the story was only supposed to be 24 pages. I didn't expect to be going on this long, much like the pandemic. So I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to work out. And I think the story didn't feel, because I've sent you a copy of it. The story didn't feel padded. It didn't feel long. It felt like it was the story that you were telling. So I think it gives me the opportunity to do longer form but stay comedic, which when you come from a sitcom background, like in your head you're thinking 30 minutes, but it doesn't mean you can't do a couple 2-part episodes now and then.
Sure. And that's one of the things that works, and it worked even with the, like, just going back to the most recent Love and Capes, the Family Way. You initially did it in 24-page, is it five 24-page issues, 6 of them? 6. And they each one worked like an episode, that concept. But this story has the legs that it needs to. It has the room that it needs to. I think, and the other part of it is you've moved it on. It's grown as a single, as almost a single story, because it's each of the pages or whatever are single vignettes. And one of the things people who haven't read Love and Capes, and shame on you for not, but and you and I have talked about the rhythm to Love and Capes and the way that the strip format flows while all of these amazing things are happening to these amazing people with abilities and how they interact in their normal lives. There's a comedy beat to it that keeps you moving and keeps the highs not too high and the lows not too low, and it just kind of keeps you on this level plane where the story is being told and you can connect to it without it really going far in one direction. And I don't mean to say that I'm not saying that you're not. What I want to say is you're extremely capable of that, but there's something about Love and Capes that is the tone that works so well for this story.
Yeah, thank you. It uses a 4-panel format, 8 panels per page, where every 4th panel is a beat or a joke. And that comes out of its comic strip roots. I'm always very proud when people don't realize that. Like they've just read the book and they haven't noticed that it has that kind of format. And the two things it does is, one, it forces me to be funny because it makes me make sure that I put jokes in on a regular basis. The other thing that it does is it just gives me a structure, and it gives me a way to do, like, if I do a full page or if I do a half page, it's going to have a lot more weight to it. And it keeps it moving in a nice pace. And it also, it's kind of like the Law and Order effect. When the original Law and Order was on, you never had a scene of the two of them in a car talking. It was always them walking to somewhere, from somewhere. Like there were no transition scenes, and there's not a lot of that. Yeah, I know.
I don't even know how to process that.
I know. I just want Sam Waterston back because he's so cool. If I have to get old, I want to get old like either him or William Shatner, obviously. But Sam Waterston is pretty cool. Yeah, but it didn't do a lot of the transition stuff. Like I joke that Bendis did deconstructed storytelling, and mine is super constructed storytelling. Like a lot happens in my books because you don't have, scenes of characters walking down hallways talking to themselves. It's all, everything's got to advance the plot, and I do a lot of heavy lifting with the caption boxes just to transition a character from one place to another, because the story is what's important. It's not about,
how did you get,
it's not about the pacing of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's definitely true. So we're gonna get the book, whether it's digital or physical, however you want to do it. There's options for both of that. And then we have not yet hit the first stretch.
I actually think I got the math on it wrong, so we did hit it.
Okay, so so
we
would
have hit it today
goal,
anyway.
Right. So that was supposed to be 6, right?
Yes, that was supposed to be 6.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting 8 extra pages so far.
Right.
Soon enough, we'll get to 75, and get some more pages, and there's some stretch add-ons that are coming, and they look cool. I'm excited about the shirt. How are we going to get to help pick the design of the shirt?
Oh,
and that's $8,000 is going to be there's going to be an add-on available for shirts.
Yeah, I'll post a few designs and send them out to the backers and let people vote on them.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great. I want to talk a little bit, especially for people who are, new to Loving Capes or don't or not, fans. And I'm going to bring this back in. So you have in here the cast, right? And one of the things that I was looking at this when we were doing it, and I find it interesting that truly Abby and Amazonia and Charlotte are a big part of this, the heart of this story. And they're 3 different women, and they are very different in so many different ways, yet they all have their own separate voices. How does that work for you to be able, do they live in your head? Are they part of, like, do you know, like, oh, Abby's in the scene, this is exactly what Abby would say, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, they do live in my head. A couple of them carved out space they weren't supposed to have. Amazonia was only supposed to appear for one joke in the first issue and was never supposed to be a thing. And I just got lightning in a bottle with her, and I never let go. She kept finding ways to show up, and she was just such a good character. And it's been such an interesting journey, because she starts off as the problem, and then she becomes, and then she gets hurt, and then she gets cycled back. Because, like, from a sitcom point of view, it's funny to try to break up a relationship. It's not funny to try to break up a marriage. So I had to transition that character when Mark and Abby got married, because she couldn't just be the person who seemed to be pining over her ex. She had to be something different as a character. And I like the idea that she keeps trying to be better, but she's still very much her. Like, she's not
right.
She's got less rough edges, but she's still very forceful and who she is. When I started off with the book, what I did was I actually had a spreadsheet, because I was worried about making too many superhero jokes, because I thought superhero jokes are easy. Like, I live in superhero world, so that it's just the way my brain thought. And I wanted to make sure that Abby was in half the book as well. And I had this really proud moment in the second issue of the original series where Abby had a scene and there's no superhero references at all. Like, it's just Abby being funny with Charlotte. And I was so happy with that, because it let me, it proved to me that these characters could stand off on their own, and that, like, the book didn't have to rely on superhero pastiche and superhero jokes, that the characters were funny by themselves. And that's one of the things, that they're all funny, and they're all funny in different ways. Like, Darkblade has a really dry sense of humor, and Zoe will be a lot more loud sometimes, or she'll be a little more on point. And Charlotte, I don't know what it is about her. She might be my favorite character.
So I was going to say something about Charlotte, and this I've said this to you before, and it just hit me as to why I feel that way. And I've said to you before that I feel that there's a very strong "mad about you" feel to Love and Capes, and it's Charlotte, because Charlotte is Helen Hunt's sister.
Oh yeah,
she is a
really strong influence. Yeah, slightly more competent.
Yes. But she doesn't start out that way. See, that's the growth, because especially when the beginning, she is very much. Is it Lisa? Is that the sister?
Lisa was the sister. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She is. She's very much her, but she grows in a way that Lisa never did.
Mm-hmm. She's just lost. Like she doesn't know what she wants to do, and it's throwing her off, and she's just kind of going from place to place. And when she figures out stuff she wants to do, she gets much more intense.
How much was Charlotte planned out at the beginning when you decided to do this?
Oh, none of this was planned out.
Well,
what had happened was I did the Raider comic that I did. And that was supposed to be like this big volumes of stuff that eventually never happened. So with Love and Capes, I wrote 24 pages, and I said, well, if I like it, maybe I'll come back and maybe I'll do 6. And I had an arc structure for they're going to date, they're going to get engaged, they're going to get married and have a kid. And then I realized I had to split that into 2 different sections. So the trilogy became a quadrilogy. But I didn't know Charlotte was going to have an arc. Like she was always a funny character to bring in, but it didn't so one of the rules I have in writing, especially in romantic comedies, is that every character has to want something that's not the other person. So you don't want to have Abby's whole purpose to get married to Mark. You want to have her have some goals that are not related to Mark, things that she wants to do. And that's what makes her interesting. And when I started drilling down and figuring out what Charlotte could do, that's when she became she was always funny. And I love that she's never impressed. She meets so many superheroes over the course of the book, and there's no point where she thinks it's cool. Like she takes everything completely in stride. And it's one of the things that hooked me to the character was that, she's just not she just doesn't take it. She just doesn't, she's not world weary, but she's just so in tune with herself that she's not flipping out about anything. And that allowed me to figure out what it is that she wants to do, and became a natural ebb and flow for the bookstore, because at a certain point having an independent bookstore is super hard to do. So the fact that they transitioned to a bookstore and an art gallery, and that fed in from Charlotte, that just felt like a very natural thing to do, as she found the thing that she wanted to do.
That's awesome. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I wanted to talk about in the current Kickstarter story, the new arc. This is an interesting concept, because you took something that happened in the world. Not only did everybody break bread, but this happened to people.
Yes.
And Mark grows a beard.
Mark grows a beard for a certain amount of time. And it's interesting. It's interesting how that happens, because, and I wanted to talk to you about comics in that regard, because the world we live in today is much more accepting of beards, of facial hair, than when we were younger. It was very clear in the episode of Justice League when Robin had the little mustache that he was the evil one, right? Yes. And we have the parallel universe Star Trek with the Spock with the goatee. So it was a sign of evil growing up. And as we've grown up, and it's much more common. For me, my father always had facial hair, so it wasn't it wasn't a symbol necessarily for me, but the concept that Mark grows his beard, I find very interesting. Even it's just,
and I have to say that it doesn't stay. And I liked when I enjoyed that it was there, and I liked when it went away. Just like I don't like Superman with a beard.
Right.
You know, it was there. He had it for a while, and I was really glad when it went away.
Yeah. So like my idea was that he couldn't grow a beard because he's actually really good about protecting his identity. He doesn't often say that he knows the Crusader. Like Abby does, but we don't know if Mark does. As opposed to Clark Kent saying, "Oh, my good friend Superman, who you've never seen me with. Why would that be suspicious?" To the point that, you know, there are all sorts of, you know, classic Silver Age Superman stories where, you know, someone bites Space Dragon bites Superman's hand, and then he has to explain why Clark Kent is wearing a bandage so that Lois doesn't figure it out. So the idea that people are wearing full face masks allows him to grow a beard so that nobody notices that he's growing a beard. And it's just something that he hasn't been able to do. And I thought that would be fun. It's kind of like I grew my goatee because I cut my face. I had a shaving accident, like 5 years ago, and I just couldn't shave for a while. So I just let it grow. And then did
you cut yourself shaving? Did you cut your face shaving?
I cut myself shaving. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, and now it's back. Now it's just permanent. Now it's just part of your icons and everything. Yeah.
So he went through that. He went through that process too.
It's funny. I ran across the first day we met picture recently, and that was before the beard, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. But yeah,
one of my favorite things, by the way, was the first year that it fully had it was the first year that Star Trek Discovery had come out, and at San Diego, they had the throne room set up from the Mirror Universe, because that's one of the big reveals.
That's perfect.
So I got my picture there, and I said the secret is I've been the evil Tom all along.
That's perfect. And hi to Brandon and Emily and Adrian who are
hello,
who are in there. Thanks for checking us out. So speaking of cons, besides the fact that we have this wonderful Kickstarter that is now funded and will continue to grow, and we can get more and more stuff for it.
Wait!
You have
one more thing about it. You can be on the cover.
Okay.
There's a level where you can be on the cover because there's a giant Zoom, because that's like everything that's COVID is Zoom, and
so
one of the biggest things I ever. Yeah,
I'm gonna add this to the screen so we can talk about the reward levels. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was the big one I just wanted to highlight, because when I did the wedding of Mark and Abby, I was trying to plot out how it was going to look, and in my head it looked like the Fantastic Four cover, and I realized that Abby didn't have enough friends, and then I realized I could sell spaces, and that was the most profitable issue that I ever did, because so many people bought spaces, and I've been looking for a way to recapture that. And the idea of them in front of a giant Zoom screen seemed like the way to do it. So yes, there is a level in which you can get a caricature of you.
Which one is that?
That's the French press, the $200 level.
Is it the French press? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, and this is the picture here.
Yes.
That we're theoretically going to put that through. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is fantastic. And so there's only 25 available.
Yes, there's obviously not the final cover, because Michael B. Jordan and Mila Kunis and stuff aren't going to be on the actual cover, but it was just placeholder images so that people knew.
Well, that's awesome. That is one of the cool things. That is available. But you are packed for the rest of the year.
I am. Oh my goodness, am I? I am an idiot, is what I am.
Where are people going to find you?
Oh, I have a rocket book. I can find this out. So first is New York. I'll be in New York next week for New York Comic-Con, and then a couple weeks later for Baltimore, where it will be an honor to lose the Ringo Award to Art and Franco. And then let's see,
and
October 3rd.
You're going to be on a panel at Baltimore. That
yes,
somebody's going to be hosting. That might be good. So that looks fun.
I'm looking forward to that. And then after Baltimore, it's going to be Denver, the little tiny convention that or not tiny, but the pop-up show that Fan Expo is doing. And then November 6th, I have a show that looks like it's going to be in Holmdel, New Jersey.
Which one is it?
I just have it. It's a one-day show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the Great Garden State something or other?
No. It's at Bellworks.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah. It's Emily's hometown, and she wanted to do a show in her town. So, yeah. And then Grand Rapids, Bayou City, and Houston. I have Thanksgiving listed as a convention because it means travel. Emerald City, and then C2E2.
Awesome.
And then a week off, and then Christmas and New Year's.
That's fantastic. So you're gonna and you will have you still have all printed copies of all versions of Love and Capes, right?
You know what? I don't.
Really? Is something out of print?
Everything is out of print.
What about
I bought the last 40 copies of Family Way. I have them now. Yes, they're on their way to me, but everything else is out of print. And I don't just mean Love and Capes, like Love and Capes, Time and Vine, Long Distance, everything except Warning Label I got plenty of. And in New York, I will finally have Cupid's Arrows, Volume 1.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, we need
I am. I'm trying to figure out what to do about it because the weird thing is that I have kept all the printed issues of Love and Capes, and Love and Capes was self-published for the longest time. I have boxes of them, in fact, and while I have less boxes because I got rid of almost a ton of comics from my attic of comics that I've done. I still have a bunch of them, but there's one issue out of the IDW run that I never bought a bunch of. So I can regenerate the entire run of Love and Capes except issue 1 of Ever After. That's a little harder to come by.
Okay. All right.
So it'll be interesting. I don't like not having them, and I have to see it's going to be talks between IDW and all sorts of stuff to figure out what we're going to do to reprint them. And it's obviously such a weird time to try to get anything printed or shipped or anything.
Shipping is crazy at this moment.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with the Cupid's Arrows Kickstarter is that they're currently on a very slow boat coming across the Pacific Ocean. So
they may be across. There's apparently a giant delay in Los Angeles or wherever.
I hope they're not there. Well, actually, I guess I do because then they're in line. So I worked with Rocket Ship Publishing on that, so I don't know everything that's going on with it the way that I do with most books that I do. And I know that they're taking care of it, but I don't know exactly where they are. I know they've gotten some airshipped for New York Comic Con.
So that was one of that's a pandemic experience, that everyone kind of dealt with in their own way. Not only was everybody relying on shipping everywhere, but a boat got stuck in the middle of the Suez Canal and shut everything down for 3 weeks. I literally, there are Kickstarters that are now in this house that were delayed because of that. I had some stuff that had come from, not only was it printed overseas, but there was stuff that was actually shipped from Europe. There were some European Kickstarters, so they couldn't get to Europe and then subsequently here. So that was some crazy stuff that we've been through.
By the way, it was the best cosplay at Dragon Con. Somebody dressed as the boat from the Panama Canal, and he could turn sideways in a hallway and block everything for photos. It was fantastic.
That's fantastic. I think my favorite thing that I saw, the favorite cosplay that I saw from Dragon Con was someone dressed as a Delta travel agent with a Loki on it, with a Loki helmet. So they were the Delta variant. So they had a travel desk with them, and it looked like they were like a flight attendant with a Delta costume, but they had Loki here. So they were Loki. They were the Delta variant. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and especially with Loki being filmed in the hotel, one of the Dragon Con hotels, there were a lot of variants.
I'm sure. I'm sure. All right, so we need to talk about something, and we're gonna take away from slightly, very away from comics, and the last time we saw each other, I had not yet watched Ted Lasso.
Oh,
so let us discuss. Now we're going to try and keep it spoiler free.
mm-hmm.
Why you have said, and I completely agree, that Ted Lasso is the Love and Capes of TV. You said it differently. You said it differently,
yes,
but I'm doing it. I'm doing it so that you get.
I'll take that. Yes, thank you.
You said Love and Capes is the Ted Lasso of comics, and I get that too. But I'm giving you the credit here. You came first.
That's true.
But why do you say that?
So Ted Lasso is a show with heart, but also with edges. Like it's about very real stuff, but it's also very sweet. And even the hard stuff, it's about characters who deeply, deeply feel, they deeply want to do the right thing, or they're deeply hurt to the point that they can't. And like everybody in the show is just a little bit broken, but they don't want to be broken. Like they're trying to be better versions of themselves. And like the line, be curious, not judgmental, I think is everything right now.
Right. That was
that was the dart scene. And like it's one of those shows that the ending could have ended at any point. Obviously, it's a show about soccer, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the end scene takes place during a soccer match, and it could have ended at any point, and it still would have been satisfying. It's great what they did, but like it's one of the things that's really interesting to me about as a writer, the thing that's interesting to me about the show is I don't know where it's going to go. Like it doesn't take easy paths, and it builds. Like it takes either an interesting path to get there, or it takes you somewhere that you weren't expecting. And it's not casual. Right.
Absolutely. I love it as every character, as you said, is a little bit broken, and they're all broken in slightly different ways. And there are ways that it's written that while you don't know where it's going to go, you know where it could go, because they give you ideas about, I can go over here with this, and you're like, well, they could probably go over here with this, but they end up going this way with it, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But you know that they it's not like they explode a conflict on you that you're not prepared for. Like, know, you see the conflicts coming. They build them up. They give you a certain aspect. Like in some of them, they haven't even gotten to yet. Like some of them are still simmering under the surface that everybody knows and everybody sees. And we're like, how are they going to deal with this thing? And you hope that maybe we'll get to that in season 3. Maybe we never get to it and it just turns into something horrible, but and that would be okay.
Yeah. The show is so good. It's like watching Pixar films or actually going to see Marvel films. Like at this point, I don't need to see your trailer. I'm just going. So you don't have to convince me. All you can do is convince me not to go. And the same way with Ted Lasso, that first season is so perfect that I don't know what's going on with certain characters in season 2. And I have actually had problems with season 2. They mostly happened in the first couple episodes.
I'll agree with you that this season 2 got better as it went along.
Yeah, so I know that they didn't realize that the episodes were, so the first season they dropped 3 episodes at once. The second season, they thought they were going to do that again. So those 3 episodes are meant to be seen at your pace, not on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that throws off the rhythm. There
Okay,
are a couple.
so
yeah,
we didn't watch it until there were 2 episodes left in season 2. So we watched all of season 1 and season 2 up to that point altogether within like 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see that there are some problems there. It got picked up quick enough. You know what I'm saying?
And the problems were the kind of problems that it wasn't the end of the sentence. It was the middle of the sentence. And with Ted Lasso, it is super rare that I could say, oh, I think you could have handled that better. There were 2 things that happened in the first couple episodes that I thought they could handle better. But because where they got was totally worth it, and they had built up so much goodwill, I didn't say, oh, you guys missed it. You guys tripped there. It was like, oh, okay, well, nobody's perfect. Like you were doing a thing and you missed it, and that's okay. It's rare that a show builds up that much goodwill.
So
but this one has.
It has. We finished, and Sherry and I were talking about like, well, where is it going to go from here? There's definitely some unresolved things. There doesn't have to be a season 3. There doesn't have to be. It would be wonderful that we have those 2 seasons of great TV. But if there is, there's a lot of things to play with.
I think they're signed for season 3. The question is, are they doing a 4?
Yeah.
And I get the impression that like season 1 would have worked on its own. Like the only reason I was worried about season 2 is that season 1 was so good. And like, can you do that again? Because now I'm paying attention. And for the most part they have.
Yeah. Have you finished season 2?
Oh yeah, I'm current on it.
Okay. It's interesting that for in terms of the way people have been consuming media, there was that I need the next, especially with Game of Thrones, because that was the thing, right? Everybody was waiting for the next Game of Thrones, hoping, finding out what happens, and eventually it did what it did. But I find in the last couple of years that people are like, okay, you did this amazing thing. I'd rather you stop now than screw it up. People had that same concept with like Watchmen, for example, which ended up being 1 season. And even with this, like I felt that I'm sure, Game of Thrones also had a story that was pre-written and came into it. But you find that with a lot of other shows where they, I'll give you an example of a show that we watched was Penny Dreadful, right? Okay. When season 1 ended, season 1 of Penny Dreadful is fantastic. It's is a great full season. Season 2 was very good, and season 3 was not as good as the other 2, and ended abruptly. You could tell that it was condensed. But like I said, I would have been okay with it if there hadn't been a season 2. Like I would be okay because that was perfect. It was complete and condensed and ended well. But I find that that's interesting how, as consumers of media, we're more welcoming of the one and done series versus I need this to go for another 20 years, or 8 seasons or.
Yeah. And I think also that part of it is that we're not hurting for content. Like there was a point where Smallville and then Arrow, those are what you had. Like there weren't a lot of other superhero shows, and now like the CW is virtually all superhero shows all the time, and it lets you get a little more choosy. Like when Farscape and Stargate were the only science fiction shows on TV, you were very protective of them, and you wanted more. And now, like Foundation is on, and that's good. I'm not I'm not hurting for stuff to watch. I'm hurting for time to watch stuff. So
Yes,
I
that's true.
don't feel quite as precious about it. Like I'm willing to say, okay, well that's good because someone else will make something else awesome. And like we're kind of in this peak TV time where TV. What I really appreciate is that TV can be TV. Like Supernatural, last episode aside, Supernatural was a show that benefited from being a TV show. Like there's sometimes a lot of pushback on American 22 episode formats, but if you ask people their favorite episode of Supernatural, one of the ones that pops up a lot is an episode that is essentially filler. I mean, they write
Mhm.
it well so it doesn't feel like filler, but it's a filler episode. Like that's exactly the episode that gets cut if you're doing, a 13 episode season. And in 22 episodes, you have the breathing room to find those spaces. And yeah, it's weird. And I'm glad that we're getting away from the Netflix drop everything.
Yes.
Because like when Daredevil was out, I know people who reacted poorly to the Kingpin episode. And the Kingpin episode is fantastic if you're watching it week to week. You're like, wow, this is a really different episode. This is interesting. Where if you're watching it like it's essentially a very long movie, you're like, oh, what's this weird side plot that came up? This isn't what I signed up for. I thought I was getting Daredevil. And I like that we've got longer shows and shorter shows, and we can do lots of interesting things. We can tell the story that fits the format, and we can make the format fit the story. It's not all the same thing.
So how do you? So let's take this back. So how does that change for you in the different projects that you do? Obviously, Loving Capes has a particular meter that you need to apply, and but when you're doing something like Warning Label or Cupid's Arrows that are in a scroll format in a 5-page episode type of thing, how do you judge, how do you manage that? And do you think the story has to match the method of consumption?
I think you can find ways to make the story match the method, but not universally.
Okay.
Like webtoons, you lose, like just because you're doing an infinite vertical scroll on a phone, you're going to lose widescreen. You can't make that work. So if your story needs those kind of visuals, webtoon isn't the place for it. But it's really good at interpersonal stuff because you're doing close-ups of characters. So there's some of that you have to watch out for. And the thing where I think modern comics in a lot of places falls down, a lot of people compare comics to TV. But the problem is that in a lot of 6-issue to be collected in trade volumes, 6 individual issues, people think that they're writing episodes of a comic, but they're writing episodes of a TV show, but they're writing acts of a TV show. And like if you watch an episode of Grey's Anatomy, at the end of watching an hour, you feel like you've seen a story. There are things hanging out. It might be continued, but you feel like you've seen a complete chunk of a thing, which you don't feel when you go to the first commercial. And I feel like comics are written like they're going to the first commercial rather than being written for being a complete story that leads to a bigger thing.
Well, that's
so I think that, yeah.
That's
so like,
I'm just saying that's the Bendis problem, right?
Right.
I mean, for lack of a better word, nothing against Brian. I think he's a fantastic writer. There's nothing, but
absolutely.
he is known for writing for the art, for the trade.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
that each issue, whereas an issue was a complete story, it leads you into the 5 issues. There's a 5-issue arc that we've extended it. So your single story is now 5 issues, which is great for a trade paperback.
Right.
And
so like when you're writing for Webtoon, you're writing much shorter things, but you have to punch the ending a little bit. Like it can be just a scene of 2 people in an elevator, but at the end of that elevator scene, it can't rest on the fact that you're coming back next week. It's got to end with enough of a punch that you want to come back next week. So you're amping up your final beat a little bit. It's got to feel complete. It doesn't mean you can't do a smaller story, but it means that you have to make it feel satisfying.
So, when you take that kind of concept and you apply it, then let's say to things you've done like Long Distance and Time and Vine, which were traditional print, floppy comics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel the need that for how do you handle page turning, cliffhangers or jumps, and how does that differ from what you're doing in a scrolling format?
So on scrolling format, I'm not worried about page jumps. I'm worried
Right.
about moments, but I'm not worried about page jumps. And I'm actually pretty
Is it more
cautious
difficult
about...
to put cliffhangers in the middle of an episode as
It's
you're
not...
in a scroll?
No, it's actually easier.
Okay.
Because it's hidden until the next scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's hidden until the next panel shows up. What you don't want is like at the end of The Family Way, when Mark takes his son for a flight, you don't want someone to accidentally see that page when they turn and have that be the odd numbered page and the even numbered page ahead of it. You want to have the reveal when they turn the page.
Mm-hmm.
The reveal is, in a scroll format, the reveal is just them scrolling. So you can put those beats anywhere you want. You don't have that problem, which is, it's interesting, especially interesting when you decide to make it a print comic again. So like when I did Warning Label, it was built on a 2x3 grid because first time working with Webtoon, I didn't know if it was going to go well. I wanted to be able to make sure I could turn it back into print real easy. So everything was, a multiple of 6 for the most part. But I wasn't worried about page turns. So I could do 30 panels, I could do 36 panels, and it didn't matter to me where a surprise was. Because they could fall in the middle of a page because you're just going to scroll up and find it when you find it.
Cool. That's good. That's cool.
It's actually something. So with the Patreon that I run, I've been putting up a Patreon.
Good.
I want to do Cupid's Arrows. I want to continue Cupid's Arrows when I know that I got to double check to make sure where my window is, where I'm clear for Webtoons, because Webtoon has said they're not going to do a season 3. But I don't think I can make Cupid's Arrows work in a page a week format, because Loving Capes has 2 beats that hit you. Cupid's Arrows is built on much more long form stuff. I can make it work in 5-page beats, but I can't do 5 pages a week unless I'm getting paid Webtoons rates. Sure. And right now my Patreon isn't paying me Webtoon rate. I want to do a chapter, but it's probably going to be like a chapter a month, because that's what I can fit in with the price of. It's what I can fit in for the time and the price, and the bank wants money for my house every month, no matter what.
Yeah, that's how it works. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
You get paid for this, and that's fantastic. So I wanted to talk about the Patreon. How do you find that to be, and what type of interactions are you getting from your patrons? I mean, is that something that what you expected?
It's better than I expected. Okay. It was a bigger reaction than I expected, and I've had great interactions with the people who post and message.
Yeah, I've seen some I've seen some of the, and it's great to see we're patrons of a bunch of people, and some of the I see a lot of really good interaction and people getting to responding to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and what's been interesting is figuring out what's important and what isn't, and some of it is just me being old and having price points in my head. So like Patreon tells you not to do a single dollar level. They tell you to go, I think with $3 is the minimum. Like they'll let you do one, but they kind of encourage you to go higher. And I couldn't figure out a way to, if I'm posting 4 pages a month over 6 months, that means that's a 24-page book, which means you paid $6 for a comic that I might sell for $5. And like the practical part of me is like, well, why would you pay for that? Like it's right on the cusp. And I couldn't see charging people out of the gate. The only way you can read this book is to pay me 3 times the cost of a comic book to have me make one comic book. Like I wanted to have a level that if you just wanted to read the book, you could just read the book and it would work out that it was worth trying out.
So it's interesting, and this is another conversation we can get into, and I think we may have before, but so one of the things, and I think I may have said this to you, and I've said it to some other people. I view Patreon as a patron, as there are creators out there who are deserving of support, and I want them to be able to do the work that they want to do. I am super appreciative of the content that they provide. I do not specifically go to Patreon and say, I am paying you this and you're going to give me that. Mm-hmm. That's the mindset that I have. One of the things that's changing or being experimented with is the concept of I am going to directly give a creator through a different platform a subscription, and they are promising to give me a comic for that in a different format. An example of that is Substack, for example. Sure. That's what we're talking about. And I, beyond the logistics that I question for that, I don't know that I want to make that transaction because I go to comic book shops. I can go to Amazon or Comixology, or I can go to Webtoon to get comics, or I can go wherever I'm going to go to get comics. And there's something behind that. Whereas one of the things about the longer form things that I found to be interesting is, we have filler episodes. There are filler comic books. There are some really good comics that were, inventory stories. It's difficult to have that when you're doing that. I mean, you would know that, you know how you do this, and you've been doing this for a long time. You're on your deadline. What type of advice do you have for somebody who's making it on their own, who's doing their own deadlines, where there's not an editor behind the screen saying, hey, this guy's late, I need to go over here and get this guy, I need to take the inks away from this guy and give them to somebody else because we're not going to have enough time?
That is hard to do when you're doing it by yourself.
Right.
Because I just wrote the biography copy for the COVID issue, and I riffed off the Avengers. There was an idea that a group of people would come together to do something amazing, but they didn't show up, so Thom did it on his own. And it's a Clint Eastwood line: a man's got to know his limitations. I know that I can do a page a day, and I have figured that, or I know that I can do a page a week on Patreon, but I figured that out from having worked on Love and Capes for 10, 15 years now. I know what's comfortable. I know what I can fit in. I know what works with a con schedule because I work on a Cintiq, and I don't always have a Cintiq with me, and I have to figure all that stuff out. It's kind of, from being an art director and working in advertising, I build in a certain amount of people messing with my schedule. So none of my plans involve everything going right. They always involve stuff going wrong. And I base out of there because it's easier to fix a problem when you've got the space to fix the problem. So for someone trying to do it, the big lesson I've had, especially like I was talking about with Raider, is go smaller. Figure out how to do something small. It's weirdly, it's like that line in Justice League: save one person. Do a page and do another page. Figure out how to do a page at a time, or figure out how to do 2 pages at a time if that's your story. But you have to figure out how to do something that you can get done, because if you bite off too big of a butt up too big a piece, you're not going to be able to do it, and it's going to keep you from getting it done. And you just have to start, like even with Love and Capes or Cupid's Arrows, you know, for as much as they're shorter form stories, you know, Cupid's Arrows being like 6 page chapters, there's still, every time I start, I'm like, oh my God, this is a really big mountain. How did I do this? Why did I do this before? This is hard. But you, like, when you do it enough, you know, there's a certain amount of trust, and that you know you can hit the deadline that you set for yourself. With Patreon, the thing that's been interesting is figuring out what's important and what isn't. And like, I have never missed, aside from like accidentally setting something to post at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. I've never missed a strip. The strip's what's important. But there's sketches of the week and lost stories and stuff like that I do. Yeah, I've missed those, because what I'm finding has happened is I want, especially coming from Webtoons, where there's a ding on the anime based fans that they love content voraciously, but they love free content and they don't spend. So I want to have a level that works for everybody. So there are levels where, like you said, if you want to pay to keep me making things, there are bigger levels to participate in that are going to make that a lot more possible. My Patreon level is what I bring in Patreon is roughly what I just had to have as my new car payment, because my car died. But that was important to me to keep it under that number. I'm like, I need to have it be something that I know I get on a regular basis. But it's that kind of, like, it goes back to the be curious, not judgmental, and weirdly some of the stuff from the pandemic, where you have to see what works for the most people. Like, how do I make this available to somebody who can only pay $1 a month? What can I give them that's worth it? What can I make available to people who want to pay me $15 a month? What's going to be worth it for them? And that kind of thing, where you're catering to lots of different people and figuring out what it is that they need and what they're willing to trade for it. That
right,
it's
the other part is what does that mean to you in terms of the time that you need to put into what you're giving for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why, like, I can do a page a day top to bottom. Like, I know it's if I bear down on it, I can get a full page of Love and Cape stuff.
Art.
That's art.
Is that
art?
Yeah,
it's everything but writing it. When I start drawing, I have to know what the story is.
So do you, when you write, when Tom the writer gives Tom the artist something to draw, does he give him a full script? Does he give him a Marvel method plot?
Yes, I work Marvel method with myself.
Okay. But do you have something?
Yeah, like, I know where I'm headed. I don't always know what the middle looks like. And what I like is the conflict. What I am proud of is the conflict between writer me and artist me. I remember coming back from San Diego years ago and just being dead tired, and I had to get a page of Love and Capes done. This was years and years ago. And the page I came back to had 7 different characters and a dinosaur and a robot and a troll. And it was a crappy page to come back to. But I like the fact that I didn't change the page because my artist didn't want to draw it. Like, when I've done, I was under deadline crunch for the issue where Windstar dies. And I wanted to show Windstar and Crusader having a relationship. And the thing that hit me is that they both fly, which is something he doesn't have with the Batman character Darkblade. So they both fly. So I wanted to have the scenes take place in the sky, and then realized the sky doesn't have any backgrounds. That will speed me up. But it was a story decision that led to there not being backgrounds. It wasn't a laziness decision or a timing decision that led to it not being backgrounds. The only place where, like, timing decisions come into play with the art, and this is something that I've fought on, like, licensed properties that I've done, is stop trying to do, like, the super amazing crazy downshot kind of thing. Like, it's okay to do like a more standard shot. It'll still tell the story. You don't have to blow people's doors off every panel you're doing. You can cut that back a little bit. But yeah, a lot of, like, I'll have the beat, I'll have the joke. sometimes with the Darkblade Crusader scenes where they're having coffee, I might do 4 panels where I don't know what the joke is, but I'm sure I'll get to one, because it's not the end of the scene. It's always like the middle of the scene where I'm like, oh, I want them to talk about this in panels 5 through 8. So I don't know what they're going to say in panels 1 through 4, but I'm sure it's just going to be funny, and we'll figure out how to make that happen. I don't like doing that too much, because a lot of times it'll wind up with me redrawing or rejiggering the panels a little bit. But yeah, I usually, like, I don't have a tight script, but I know what the punchline is, and I know what I'm going to do to get there. And I've gotten much better at writing notes for what the jokes are, because I will say that I'll remember them and then I won't. So I've at least learned that lesson.
That's a good lesson to learn. Like,
yeah.
So again, a page a day, does that include lettering?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well then,
lettering, coloring, the whole thing.
And that's better than some other people that I know in the business these days.
Yeah, and some of it is like I do digital backgrounds. Like,
sure.
I'm doing a sitcom comic, so if I draw a city, sometimes I can reuse a city, or I can, when Mark and Abby are in their house, I don't have to redraw their house. I've drawn it once, because nobody is reading the comic to see what stuff is on the bookshelf. Right. That's not important. But it's for me, it was figuring out what things are important and what things aren't to the art, and the expressions and the characters and the body language. That stuff is all really important. Like, I'm not doing I think Dilbert does it. I don't think Garfield does it, but it feels like it sometimes. Like, I'm not using stock art of the characters. Like, it's always a fresh version of the character, but background I might have drawn 5 years ago if I think it still looks okay, because the background's not what's important. It's the background. That's what it's there for.
Right. That's awesome. That's great. Let's come back to the Kickstarter. So
sure.
It ends on the 28th. Is that right?
28th. Yes. Because it started yesterday on the 28th. So 30 days.
So yes, it will be October 28th, 1 p.m. And we are looking forward to this. Now, how are you doing? What is your expectation on fulfillment? I know that obviously we can never ask that question ever again, because we have experienced, pandemic levels of fulfillment. But what's your thought?
So what's super fortunate about funding so quickly is that I know most of what has to be done, and most of it is done. So the entire comic itself is finished. I have to write the back matter. I have to do caricatures that are on the cover. And if we hit the level where I have to do 4 extra pages, I have to figure those out. But none of those should take too long. And what will probably happen is, in about 15 days, I will start talking to the people who need me to do stuff to get the book printed and getting that stuff out of the way.
Are you going through Rocket Ship again on this, or no?
No, this is me. This is Merkle Press.
Okay.
So, like, if you get a caricature, you'll probably get an email from me in a couple weeks saying, okay, well, it's not completely funded yet, or it's not, I haven't gotten the money yet, but send me your photo. Here's my email address, so I can start drawing it, so I can get ahead on that, so that I'm not drawing 25 caricatures on the last day. I'm going to try to get ahead of that. And if I can get ahead of that, like, the inside of the book is done. Like, the back matter I got to write, but I'm going to write that in the next couple days. That won't be that hard. Drawing 4 pages, that's going to take me 4 days, assuming that I can figure out a script. And then it's the caricatures on the front. So it shouldn't take that long. Like, my plan is to have it done by December. I checked with my printer. I know that if I get it to him at the end of October, that I can take possession in December. And, like, this is going to sound kind of silly, but I want to make sure that the book is out in December, so it's eligible for award season. Like, it's got to be published and distributed in December. Yeah,
that's important,
because I don't want to have a year where I don't have stuff that's eligible.
I completely respect and understand that. Patreon doesn't count.
So I can do it as a webcomic, but it wouldn't count as a print comic. And every once in a while, like, it feels weird. Like, is like, I understand the Eisner's thing. It becomes weird because technically the trades are a reprint of an existing thing rather than a new thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So like if
Right,
you
right.
if you collect 6 issues of Batman, are you voting on the issues or are you voting on the trade? Because the trade is a reprint of the issues. So if I make everything come out in the same year, I get around that.
Okay,
So
that's good.
it allows Love and Capes to be considered as a print web comic rather than just as a web comic.
That's great. That's good. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for people to get their hands on it who haven't seen it. And people will be able to find. So I've been running along the bottom here. There's the Kickstarter link is there. It's also in the comments. If anybody wants to go back to the comments in this, if they come back later and watch the show, it is it's on Kickstarter, and the link to it is in the comments. You can be found at thomz.com. Is that right?
Yes. THOMZ.
Right. And it's on Patreon. It's one word, Thom Zahler, to find you there. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We are happy to support this. It is, and coming back to what we talked about earlier, there is the same genuine hope and human anxiety that is in Ted Lasso. You find in the pages of Love and Capes. There's that.
Thank you.
There's that flawed, but not flawed human, but that's not necessarily a caricature of humanity that you'll find other places. Some places there are characters that are so fractured that they don't represent, what people truly are. So they just become an archetype or something like that. Whereas the characters in both Ted Lasso and Love and Capes are people who want to be good people, but have their own struggles, and as every one of us does.
Thank you. And, that is definitely what I'm going for. I want real people going through real things, just in a fantastic world.
Sure. That's awesome. And that's what's so great about it. All right. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See ya. Take care.